Hello, this is Monica Volkmar, and you're listening to Movement Detectively. Today I'm speaking with Dave Hedges. Dave is an injury management and movement therapy coach in the UK. I wanted to speak with Dave because, as you'll hear in our interview, he has a very intimate, complex, and thoughtful relationship with movement. In his work, Dave helps a vast array of folks from high level martial arts athletes to the older, normal, injured person just wanting to move better. He's someone who's been on my radar as an individual in the movement world who has a unique and effective approach for helping people overcome chronic pain while at the same time enhancing their performance in whatever capacity that means to them. In our conversation, we discuss his early life discovering karate and how this gave him the discipline and skill of self responsibility that you'll hear pervades his working philosophy, and a characteristic that he credits to his being able to get himself out of pain after a back injury forced him to pivot in life from karate to coach. We'll also discuss how to think about injury prevention, the concept of training our human animal, and so much more. I really loved this conversation with Dave, and I hope you will enjoy it too and get something from it. And now, without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Dave Hedges. Dave Hedges.
How
Hello.
are you?
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to speak with you, Dave, is because of what I've witnessed with your online presence is that you seem to have a very intimate, complex, thoughtful, just interesting relationship with movement and your own body
Hmm.
and the way that you work with bodies. And you also seem to have such a broad scope of thoughts, ideas, opinions, practical skills, experiences, and it makes you a very intriguing person. And I would love to understand more about what you do and how you do it and your own journey with your body and how it is that you came to be the person that you are today doing the work that you do. So maybe to start with, can you just say a little bit about who you are and what is your professional title?
I am Dave Hedges, and my professional title, I like coach. Um, I have the title movement therapy and injury management on the website, the business, but I just consider it all coaching. So I'm a coach.
And
Um,
who are the kinds of people that you work with and coach?
who do I work with? Quite an array of people, to be quite honest. Um, the common thing I look for is you could say it's an attitude. We talk a lot about attitude. You might call, if you've been following my social media, that word comes up quite a bit. Um, and that attitude is people who are willing to do the work, to take responsibility for themselves and to put in the hard yards, basically. So I don't really mind what you do, what your background is. I care more about the attitude you bring. And if that's there, then anything's possible.
Mm. And what would you say are the problems that people most typically have when they come to see you, or what are the goals that they have for working with you?
The goals vary quite a lot. I've had people who simply want to get back moving. They're in pain, they're injured. Maybe they have an active background and they want to start back doing something, but they just keep running into a wall. I've got people who are training amateur athletes at quite a high level. We've got a few who've done pretty well in their various sports. So quite an array from, I had a lady who trained with me in Dublin for a long time, simply wanted to get moving, lose a bit of weight. She a cancer survivor, wanted to get back at it. And she trained beside a lady who was a world champion full contact fighter. So, um, yeah, quite an array of people would come to me. And with that, they bring with them a load of different problems. Just this last couple of months, I've helped one guy rehab from a heart valve replacement. He's now part cow, which is quite funny. Um, Another fella who's recovering from an Achilles rupture. Two very different people. And I've got another lad who's just starting on a journey to again perform in his sport, a jiu-jitsu player, at quite a high level. So it's a nice variety of people. Do you know what I mean? It's I think that's what keeps it interesting. I don't just do one thing with people because that would be boring. I have a limited attention span for that. But like I said, that common attitude is what I look for.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I also struggle with labeling myself as one thing, and I have a mixed bag of tools and things that I've done. And I'm similar to you in that I coach people in movement. I help people with injuries and pain. I've worked with an array of people from, athletes to an elderly person who's recovering from a ACL surgery. And it is interesting working with that variety of people. But I love what you said about attitude. I've gotten the
Mm.
question before for myself, like, what's your favorite kind of person to work with? Like, what kind of clients do you like? And it does come down to attitude, doesn't it? Like, just the desire to actually participate and take ownership. Do you have, if people come to you and they don't have that kind of attitude, do they just kind of filter themselves out, or do you specifically say, no, I can't help you? Like, what does that look like?
Very rarely will I say I can't help you. When people come to me and I don't think I can help them, generally they don't come to me because one, I'm really bad at marketing. So not a lot of people actually know about me. You generally come to me because you've searched me out or you've been told to come to me, you've been recommended me. So that in itself is a bit of a filter. Then when people meet me, we generally have a conversation. And it usually goes along the lines of, what are you looking for? How do you want to achieve it? And then I explain to them how it works in that I don't do the work. It's your body, so you're going to do the work, but I'll guide you. I'll walk beside you. I'll support you. Um, and if we get through that, then usually then we've set a precedent, and the rest of the work, I've always said coaching is a conversation, so it has to revolve around the relationship between me and the client. And I don't have to tell people that I can't help them because either they decide at that point they don't want the help. I'm not the guy for them. They'd much rather go to somebody who's going to work on them rather than with them. And yeah, it's not really an issue I come up against.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when you're being yourself, then that speaks for itself. And your people will find you, and the ones that don't resonate with you just won't. So that's, I
Yeah.
think, the best marketing strategy out there, just being you. And you
Yes.
mentioned walking beside people. I love that way of putting it. Did you have anybody in your path that you felt walked beside you in that way?
Yeah. So as a kid, I took up karate. Um, and my karate instructor was, we'll say, life changing.
Mm.
So he would have been probably the biggest influence on who I eventually grew into, I would think, outside of my own family. So yeah, in that respect, yeah, he would have been the guy that would have walked beside me. And then over the years, there's been a few sort of strong characters along the way. Coming to Dublin, and I met this guy Paul Cox, and the two of us clicked, and that's who I set up the gym in Dublin with. And even though I'm not in Dublin anymore, we're still good friends. But yeah, for years we worked together, trained together, um, developed developed my style of coaching together, I suppose. Um, so yeah, it's important to have somebody who is just there sometimes that you can bounce off, who will encourage you to keep going.
Mm. So you started karate at what age?
I was 11.
11. Wow. And did you love it right away?
Oh yeah, fell for it. Kind of kind of took it on as an identity, if you like. That was what I did. Um, that was pretty much the core of what I did. I was kind of training for my black belt instead of studying for exams. When I was coming up to leaving school, um, yeah, kind of lived for doing karate through my childhood. That kind of kept me centered and anchored. And then from leaving town, moved to a different town, found a martial arts club, moved to a different town, found a martial arts club, and that's pretty much what I did for years. This Dungannon that I've been in now for the last couple of years is the first time I've not had a martial arts club,
Mm.
which is which is a new thing.
And so it sounds like you work with people helping them to move and strength training and injury management. And it sounds like you didn't have a conventional educational path in that field. Or what was your educational path? Did you go to formal school for what you do, or how much of it was self-taught or led by other mentors?
Yeah, no, I didn't go the traditional path at all. So um, my parents had to convince me to stay in school. Um, I was just completely fed up with it. So, left school at 18 and went into working.
Mm.
Um, but I just always had this, because of the martial arts, of the karate, I always had this fascination with what can the body do. So it was always in my head. So I had a few different career paths along the way, but I was always moving and studying movement and experiencing movement, reading books and whatever else. Then the internet happened and you could read further and wider, get in touch with coaches and experts all over the world. So I just absorbed information. And then I was talking to a friend of mine in Dublin who was a physiotherapist. He knew about Gary Ward and anatomy and motion, so he put me onto that. So when they came to Ireland, I was on that course. Um, I'd done a few other courses along the way, and yeah, just picked it up as I went along.
Mm. Yeah, my path as well was not a traditional educational path. It was largely educated by my own injuries and needing to get better myself, and then finding the courses and books and people that then helped me to learn what I needed to learn to help myself, which I then was able to practice with other
Yeah,
people very selfishly to learn more about how to help myself and hopefully help a few other people along the way. Um,
yeah.
but before we get more into that part of your story, I was just curious. You said something about your karate instructor was really
Mhm.
transformative for you. Can you say a
Yeah.
bit more about that relationship and what you got from that?
Um, what I got from it became almost like a third parent. Um, I didn't know that I really craved discipline and movement, and I had no direction as a kid. Didn't like school, didn't want to know. Quite anti-establishment in that thinking. Um, didn't like being kept. at a desk in a chair. So I was kind of struggling, and I think I could have gone down a very different path. But I had friends who were in the karate club, and I was kind of too scared to go down. And then, we changed school into secondary school, and that whole period of settling in and finding the pecking order amongst the kids. I lost a few times, so I decided I must go down to that karate club where my friends are. And it just gave me a discipline and a direction, and it gave me a bit of an identity to hang on to. Like I kind of knew who I was. I was Dave, and I did karate. Um, and Jack was just this guy who, again, like we're talking about attitude. If you wanted to train, he wanted you to train. He wanted everybody to be the best they could. So as long as you came in, it didn't matter your actual ability. Once you were in there and you were willing to work hard, then he'd help you work hard. And it was just amazing. And I sort of grew up under that. And then again, around 16, I think it was, around the age of 16, I was struggling. Um, and again, you go through your teenage rebellion years, so I was kind of hitting that. But also physical changes. I grew tall, but I didn't fill out. So all my competitors in the karate filled out more than me. I wasn't strong, and I got beaten, and I failed a grade, and just had a bit of a bad patch for a while. And Jack just took me aside one day and says, "Dave, you need to get strong." So I spoke to some friends who were on the school rowing team. They allowed me to join their strength and conditioning sessions. So, just that one sentence from Jack, "Dave, you need to get strong," got me lifting and training. And again, I once again realized, like, oh, right, I can do this. I can take control of my life. And I think that's what Jack really gave me, is that independence. Um, and yeah, from that moment onwards, everything I did, I just had this goal. Well, I'm Dave and I do karate. I want to be better at karate. So if I run, well, that builds my endurance and I get better at karate. If I lift weights, I get stronger and that makes me better at karate. And if I do this, that makes me better at karate. And just everything just kind of revolved around that. You could say it was a little bit obsessive. Um, but, Jack with his sense of humor and his drive and his enthusiasm, yeah, it just gave me independence.
Mm. What a wonderful gift. Is Jack still around? Do you still have a relationship with him?
Unfortunately not. He died a few years ago. I think he's coming on 10 years, I think.
Wow. You mentioned the concept of being a bit identified with a movement practice, and
Mhm.
I think that's a wonderful thing as a young person who is trying to learn who they are and learn how their way is of moving through life and develop confidence. And that discipline is so important to develop with a movement practice. But I wonder, do you think that having that identity so tightly held to karate, was that ever harmful in any way for you? Like the risk of over-identifying with being anything? Do you think that was something necessary at that time to do? And did you let go of that identity at any point?
I think, yeah, a strong, if you hang your identity on something outside of yourself, yeah, that can become its own problem. But you also need something that will, I think, especially growing up, um, you need something that's going to keep you sort of going in the right direction. Um, like a compass bearing, if you like. And then once you can realize that, the end of that journey, that compass bearing, you might never reach it, but that's just going to keep you going in the right direction. You can go off on tangents and get lost in it, but you will come back to that bearing. If you can have that, then I think that's what you sort of need. Um, Not everybody needs it. Some people just sort of have it naturally, but I find a lot of people, I certainly needed it. Um, you know, once I got that black belt, soon after, finished school and then left town and excuse me again. I know we're good. We're good. Got the black belt, left town, finished up school, left town, started working in a different town with just a different way of living because it was a different town. And it was a case of, right, how can I be karate but not have a karate club? And you know, at that point, I started developing a slightly different idea of um, kind of this romantic idea of the samurai warrior and all the martial arts movies and stories, wandering the earth and all that. And it's just right. So karate helped me become a better person. I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm focused. So applied that to the work, and you know, bosses recognized it and got promotions and whatever else. And it became less about actual karate, throwing kicks and punches and wearing a white suit and jumping around, and more about the sort of the sort of the underlying principles of it. Um, like I said, that discipline, that ability to push, that desire to push forward, um, and just be this idea of a human animal, a better human animal, which is an idea I came up with. I'd have been around 20, came up with this idea that, well, animals, if you have a dog needs walked every day. Why don't people think of themselves in the same way? You need exercise every day. And I was like, why don't people do that? So I thought, well, I'm living in a town that doesn't have a martial arts club. I had friends who did martial arts, so we used to meet up and train in all sorts of places. But I thought, well, if I don't have them, I can still go for a run. I can still go to the gym. I can still get on the bike. I can still exercise. And I've forgotten the actual question now, but anyway, that was the sort of beginnings of, we'll say, an overall philosophy. So, oh yeah, it was the identity, wasn't it? I identified as a karate guy. No, that drifted. So it became not just about the karate, but about the individual person who just happens to do karate. What did that mean? And it was being a better human animal, which I thought was kind of an underpinning that the human being would improve if the animal improved. So I thought, right, let's just focus on the animal and we will run and we will lift and we'll just move like an animal would. Um, and yeah, I found that to be my identity. When people get really locked into an identity, we find this with the competitors more, sports people. As soon as you lose that competitive edge, either through age or injury, that's a big deal. And I think that might be where you were kind of going with the question, and I've gone off on a ramble. Um, so if you're, I did have a big injury, so that was my mid to late 20s. I had a big back injury, and all of a sudden I was no longer the arse kicking champion of the world. I was no longer this able to train like a lunatic all the time. It stopped me. I was like, right, okay. But that was the transition I needed to become the coach. Working with a lot of other athletes, when they have that big injury, you can see them lose that bearing that we're talking about, that compass bearing, and they start drifting. So if you can convince them, it's like you're not the sport, you're not the injury, you are you're Monica. Well, what is Monica? At the core, And how can we then work to get you back doing the things you want to do? And it becomes less about the external activity and more about who you are.
Mm,
And if we can get you back doing, your identity comes back. And it always comes back a little bit differently.
mm,
Do you know what I mean? You're not so single focused on this one thing. Now you know your Monica who does this thing. So yeah,
mm,
I think that's kind of the journey I've been through.
mm,
And I've definitely helped other people through that.
mm. Mhm. That gave me some shivers, actually. How much that resonated with me was uncanny.
Right. In what way?
Well, I mean, my first career, I was a professional dancer.
Very good.
However, and I definitely resonate with the building discipline and how that helped me a
Mm.
lot in that doing that caliber and competitive nature of training physically. I think that set me up for being a very disciplined person in many ways, although I still distract myself unnecessarily and have many
Yeah.
faults. However, but what's really interesting, I think, is I identified so much as a dancer until I was injured when I was in my early 20s. When I was 22, also had a pretty bad back injury and had to stop. And it was a little bit world-shattering, but it was also incredibly relieving because for me, I actually didn't love dance. I hated it, to be honest. I didn't like who I was when I was doing it, and yet I was so tightly identified with that, which is so weird
Hmm.
that I was so identified with something that I hated. So that was a whole layer of unpacking to do when I stopped dancing and then transitioned, much like yourself, into learning how to take care of myself again. But I think that for you, coming from a place where you've had that transition, you're so well set up to help people that are going through that in their own way. And you're right. When you stop, you're kind of left, when you stop with the activities that you kind of labeled yourself as, you're left with, well, who am I now? Who's left of this person that I thought I was this, but now I can't do that. So who am I? And that's such a beautiful place to find yourself in once you get past how shit it is to be in that place and you're able to investigate it a little bit more. So that's so lovely to hear that. So you got into strength training as well. I'm pretty sure you're into the world of kettlebells and
Yeah.
lifting heavy things. When did you make that more part of your life and career?
So I said earlier on that Jack took me aside and says, Dave, you need to get strong. So at that time in school, I had a group of friends who were the rowing squad. So I think they were ranked in like the top 15 in their age group in the country. Um, so I just said to them, they were in the gym with the rowing team twice a week. So I said, can I join you? They had a word with a coach and said yes. And that was my introduction to strength training. Um, outside of, do push-ups and sit-ups and all that, but now we're actually lifting weights and getting stronger. So that then it was just that I never felt strong before. Never really, I wasn't a strong kid. I'm from a family of people who are strong. So that was really cool to just to feel that. And then the kettlebell, that came around much, much later. When would that have been? That has to be around 2004, 5, I reckon, when I first started seeing this thing called a kettlebell. Um, I was just looking for other ways to train. Now, I don't know what it's like where you are, but everywhere you look these days, there is a gym. There's a fitness center or a gym on bloody every street corner these days. Back in the day, back when I was a kid, gyms didn't exist. There'd be, and if it did, it'd be some underground, terrifying cave somewhere. Um, so in Dublin, 2005, there was a few places around, but not a huge amount. And a lot of them would be associated with sort of health club, just full of machines and that, and it just didn't feel right. I came from the school gym to a lot of improvising outdoor training. So when I was looking again to get back into lifting and strength training, I wasn't going to go to a place that's just a hotel gym. So looking around, found this thing called a kettlebell. At that time, the early 2000s, the only information really available on the internet was from the hardstyle. Pavel Satsulin and John Duquesne putting out this information. So I was reading it, and I was reading it, and it was kind of, kettlebells will regrow missing limbs and cure cancer and all that. I was like, this can't be right. This can't be right. But there was something about it. Just I don't know. It was just I liked the idea of it. Something about it. Training with barbells and body weight stuff, and I just thought this kettlebell just it looks different. And I think in the swinging movements did remind me of some of the videos you'd see of the old Chinese and Japanese instructors with their stone padlock, they call it, which is this concrete block with a handle, and they swing it and they throw it around, very much like the kettlebell movements. I was like, right, okay, have to get one. So found one. There was a dude had his gym. He was just starting to get into supplying equipment, so I bought a kettlebell off him and started playing with it. And yeah, I really like this. It feels right. So did an experiment, just me, had the kettlebell in the house. Didn't take it to the karate club, didn't take it to the Kempo club at the time, and just worked with it at home. Got a good feel for it. Started talking to Paulie, who we eventually set up Wild Geese a few years later. Started telling him about this. He was interested, so I brought it in, showed him. Paulie had a bodybuilding background, so he saw the value. He's like, I like this. It just felt right, along with it just felt right for a martial arts body. You know what I mean? The way we wanted to move. And then how did I hear about it? Oh, it's actually in a magazine. Do you remember magazines? We used to get magazines. There's an advert in a magazine for a workshop. The All Ireland Kettlebell Lifting Federation were hosting Vasily Jinko, former world champion, world record holder in kettlebell sport and kettlebell lifting. I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Went down to that and working away through the workshop. It was great. The All Ireland Kettlebell Lifting Federation at that point was one person. It was a guy called Jason Kelly. He hosted it at Straight Blast Gym, which is now famous. There's John Kavanagh's gym that Conor McGregor came out of. This was back before Conor, back in the early 2000s, 2007, I think. And we were doing this workshop with Vasily, learn proper kettlebell lifting. Have to say, he was impressed with the form. There was a few tweaks he needed to make, but I'd done pretty well on my own to get to that point. Having a wide movement background really helped, I reckon. And at the end of it, he just looks at me and he goes, "Do you teach?" in his Latvian Russian accent. I was like, "No, you should." Right, okay. And I was doing a fitness instructor course at the time, so I was like, right, I will bring these kettlebells in and we'll start training people with kettlebells. And that's what I did.
Mm. Yeah, I had a little adventure into kettlebells in one part of my path as well. Don't so much anymore,
Hmm.
but at the time, I think I was drawn to them because I needed something to ramp up my sympathetic nervous system.
Very
Like
cool. Yes.
I was so stuck in the side of the spectrum of needing or wanting, thinking that I needed to calm myself down to the point where
Yeah.
I couldn't pick myself back up and get energized again. And so I started working with a coach who taught hard style, and I realized how hard it was to actually access the power that my body had because I had done such a good job at chilling it the fuck out. And actually, that's something that I wanted to ask you about was that I know you
Yeah.
do
Cool.
a lot of movement practices, like a nice variety of them from kettlebell training, you do Indian clubs, strength
Hmm.
training, weightlifting, you do martial arts, you do anatomy and motion, and you have, I think, Qigong. So
Hmm.
it seems like there's a nice blend and balance of what you might call more hard and soft, or masculine and feminine, or yin and yang, or sympathetic and parasympathetic practices. I don't know if that's true, but it's kind of what I'm gathering. And I wonder if that balance of those styles of movement forms, is that something that you deliberately set out to do, or is that something you just fell into, if that makes sense?
Does make sense. Yeah, like what you're saying about you chilled out so much you couldn't pick yourself back up. There is, there always has been this whole you must stay calm, breathe, relax, blah 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 blah. Anger and aggression is bad. You must be mellow, and it kind of gets drilled into you a little bit too much. And if you're inclined to listen to that and you start believing all that, I do think you can mess yourself up because we're not meant to be all one thing. We're not, even in ourselves, we're not meant to be all one thing. It's a pendulum that swings. So yeah, I do quite intense physical training on one end of it, and on the other end of it, I've got the qigong and the meditative side of stuff. Um, and you're as likely to find me sweating and half killing myself training, but you're as likely to find me flat out on the sofa with the dog watching the TV. So, do you know what I mean? We're meant to exist on a spectrum. The pendulum swings from one side to the other. And one side of that pendulum swing is not correct. It's not more correct than the other side. But the fact that the pendulum will swing from one side to the other, that's where the magic is.
Mm.
Um, how did I sort of come across that? Well, again, getting into the sort of the stories and the romanticism behind a lot of the martial arts, and you have this warrior monk, and you have the Zen meditation, and you have the stories of these. The beautiful thing about the sort of the Asian stories is they exaggerate and they become sort of parables nearly. It's not fact, but there's this grand story that carries an idea, and if you sort of pick up on the idea, it's like brilliant. So you hear these stories of these Zen masters who can, walk across, fire walking, and they can almost walk across water, and they can jump 15 foot high and punch through a brick wall and all this. It's like, wow, that's cool. As a kid, that's like superhero stuff. And you hear about, well, yeah, they do the hard training, but then they do the meditation and they train their mind, they train their spirit through these different avenues. I was like, right, okay, how do I do that? How do I become this superhero, this warrior monk? Um, and yeah, you just discover the various avenues, and it's really fascinating now listening to neuroscience communicators, human being probably the king of them, the most popular of them all. But you've got David Eagleman and you've got various other ones as well who are all talking about this. They're they're bringing us sort of breath work and the down regulation work that is in the meditative world, in the Qigong and all that, and then explaining it through neuroscience, through what actually happens in the nervous system. But they're also giving a nod to, yes, you downregulate, but you also have to upregulate. We need we need to do the stuff that gets the heart rate up, and we need to find that you need to access both ends of that pendulum swing.
Mm.
So I found it initially as a kid with the romantic stories of martial arts and that, but as we've gone on experientially, I found it to be absolutely dead right. Um, in the various avenues of work that I've done, even being out on the mountains for, getting a bit lost and being out longer than I should have done, or getting injured out on the mountains and having to get myself down, or you find that, well, this is no longer a physical thing. This is now a mind thing. You know, you've trashed your ankle and you're 5 miles from your car over rough terrain. It's like, okay, I've got to get myself back to the car. Then I'm going to drive back. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a physical thing anymore. It's a mental thing. And the it's now balancing the panic and the upregulation you got from I'm in pain and I'm a little bit lost, and the calm you need from to the if I go in this direction and I just keep stepping, I will get to where I'm going. And it's if you don't train both sides of that, you can't find the middle.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And the middle is where that sort of flow state kind of lives. So finding it was again, yeah, it's romantic stories. Applying it was just my lifestyle that I was kind of living. And then more recently, the truth is coming out through the neuroscience research, which has been communicated by the likes of Human and many others. I follow a few on Instagram. I couldn't even tell you the names, but yeah, it's. I think it's silly to think we have to be one side or the other.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It is both. It's always been both, and it's flowing between them is the key.
Mm. Yeah, and that's almost what health is, really, is having that adaptability to flow between those two poles and those two spectrums. And I definitely found myself in this trap of just meditating myself into a mush. And then at one point, I asked myself, what's the end goal of this? And the goal really was I want to downregulate sufficiently so that I feel confident to go out into the world and then experience that other end of the spectrum and encounter stress and challenge and be able to counterbalance back again to the middle and
Like,
flow between the poles. But I'd got lost along the way that somehow the goal was just to obliterate myself into a parasympathetic pulp. And
yeah,
yeah, it took a bit of experimentation to learn that lesson. Yeah.
and your experience there is not unique. Because the back in the day, the meditative, the downregulation stuff, it was the realm of as I joke, the tree huggers and the crystal healers. It was the laid back people.
Mm,
But again, I came to it from, we'll say, the sort of warrior culture idea, the warrior monk idea. And it was this idea of if I train the calm side of it, when I get into the chaotic side of life, a fight, but I can stay calm and I can bring those tools with me.
mm,
Well, now you stay calm in the chaos. And that idea really resonated with me. It's like, right, brilliant.
mm,
And if you spend time around extreme sports people, mountain bikers, and I've spent a lot of time around mountain bikers, snowboarders, fell runners, and you're going very quickly across rough terrain. Uh, and again, back in the day, we didn't have the groomed mountain bike trails. We rode whatever was in front of us. Um, but again, you're going at a million miles an hour through this rough terrain. If you're not staying calm, you are going to crash.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So this chaotic, from the outside, chaotic, adrenaline-fueled sport, but from the inside, you're staying dead. Well, as calm as possible. Because as soon as you get over-aroused, now you're not thinking clearly. Do you know what I mean? As your adrenaline goes up, as your brain starts speeding up, you can't make complex decisions. So it's to be able to stay calm enough to see the turn, to see what the person in front of you is going to do, to keep yourself not laid back and chilled, but to prevent yourself getting overexcited.
Mm. Hmm. Calm in the chaos.
Calm in the chaos.
Yeah. Speaking of chaos, Dave, you mentioned before that your back was a source of trouble for you that caused you to switch gears in life and transition more into working with bodies and learning about how to take care of yourself. Can you tell me
Hmm.
a bit more about what happened from there when you injured your back and what happened to your back?
What happened to the back was, um, I'm going to say, a list of injuries that all added up, combined with some probably unbalanced training. And it was just a perfect storm, and things went boom.
Mm.
So, me being me, I hurt the back doing I think it was a bent over row. Oh, excuse me, which kind of put me out for a little while. But, found a way to train, still trained, was feeling good, was getting back into lifting again. And I think then I was deadlifting and, yeah, did it again. Two big bangs in a fairly short space of time. And that then put me out. I was in trouble. Went to a number of physios and that, and nobody seemed to be able to do anything for me. So gave up on them, and I just thought, right, let's just work and we'll see what I can do myself. But at that time, this was in Dublin. This was in the Martial Arts Academy under a guy called Shay McNamee. We were training away. Myself and Paulie did a bit of teaching for Shay. And it was a case of, well, I can't go in at sort of 4 in the afternoon, spend 2 hours training, have me dinner, spend a couple of hours teaching, and then go off and go to work in the evening. I was still working on the doors at that point, but so what can I do? That training time, I just took and started reading instead. So instead of doing training, I read about training, and I started absorbing as much as I can. And it was physical training, it was strength and conditioning work that I was reading about mostly. Not that I was born in martial arts, but I'd kind of done it. Do you know what I mean? So spent all the time reading. Realized then that, well, no, not realized, because I wasn't able to jump around as much and do the martial arts, I was spending more time with students, teaching and guiding. So during the day, I was reading, during the evenings, I was teaching, um, doing my bit of training, but that was kind of limited at that point because I was in, in a jock. So it's kind of like, I really like this. This is good. I think this is what I'll do. Um, and when we decided, the martial arts academy sort of folded in on itself, and Paul and I took the building over, rebranded it as Wild Geese. That's what we did. I started running a fitness class, um, as well as teaching some of the martial arts. Paulie focused on teaching the martial arts. And then when a whole lot of other things happened, the country went in recession and work dried up, and it was like, right, I need to take this club, and I am going to be a professional coach now. That's going to be my income because I've no other work. And yeah, that's basically how it happened. Notifications popping up there. We'll get rid of that. Um, and yeah, that's sort of how it happened. I didn't see I had a choice.
Mm. So you mentioned in a large part getting out of that pit of back pain and not being able to train. A large part of that was learning about strength training. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of people also they're told when they're injured that oh you just need to get stronger, like you have a weak core, things like that. And I was that person too. I thought that strength would cure all of my problems, also my moral shortcomings, which also wasn't true. And, and so I'm curious about that for you. So you must have gotten into strength training, but then I know that you went beyond that to understanding movement at a more nuanced level and how it's more than just strength or mobility. So what was that journey like beyond strength and what did you learn?
Well, that I don't really see it as being much of a journey, to be quite honest. Because again, everything I did was karate. If I was lifting weights, I was doing karate because it made me stronger for karate. Um, the karate had moved beyond just being a martial art to like a philosophy, if you like. So, what's the point of just being big and strong if you can't move? What's the point of moving if you're not also strong? Um, no, plenty of guys who can do the splits but can barely do a squat. It's like, well, what's the point? You know what I mean? If you've got a kick that looks beautiful, but it doesn't actually have any impact behind it, what's the point? So strength was never a goal in itself. Strength was a tool. If I get stronger, I get better at the thing I want to be better at. Do you know what I mean? Same with cardio and endurance. If I have a bigger fuel tank, well, I can do the thing longer, I can recover better. And it was always about the performance at the end of the day. The idea of just having a stronger core never made sense to me because that's just one part of the body. It's like, why focus on that? That's like focusing on having a stronger shoulder. It just didn't do anything for me. So no, the whole body, the transfer of power. If you want to throw a punch or you want to throw a person or you want to move something heavy, you press into the ground and it comes all the way through the body into the arm, never just about the arm. And this is all stuff that's in martial arts. If you look for it, particularly the older, the traditional martial arts and the Chinese way of looking at it, um, you know, I did study with some Tai Chi and some internal, you mentioned Qigong earlier on, and that's all about ground reaction forces at the end of the day. If you want to put it into modern scientific terms, you learn how to sink and feel your weight going into the ground so you can push off it. And if you push off it hard enough, it goes into the other person and they fall over. Um, so that was my whole idea of strength training to get stronger, but for what? Movement and mobility, but for what?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's a lot of the talk is undefined. Like the gym at the moment is huge. Everybody's in the gym, everybody's training and fitness and whatever else, but for what? And it's one of the first things I ask people. It's like, well, what are we working towards? What is that bearing? What are we putting in as our destination on Google Maps? Do you know what I mean? What is it we're doing this for? And that's the key. Otherwise, you just go through the motions. You're just doing bicep curls for the sake of doing bicep curls. Um, Rather than I'm doing bicep curls because now I can decelerate a punch when I miss. I'm doing bicep curls because now I can help it stabilize my scapula. I'm doing bicep curls because now I can resist an armbar a little bit better. And I'm doing bicep curls because my wife likes it. Um,
Also important.
all important, all important. Um, so it's what is in the destination on your sat nav.
Mm. Yeah. So if it wasn't strength training necessarily that you saw as a way of helping with your back pain, then what was the biggest game changer for you?
In terms of the back pain.
Yeah, what helped you the most with that?
Take responsibility for it.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Right. Well, instead of the back, let's talk about the shoulder. So a few years ago, I was helping a lad train for an event, and I was doing his strength and conditioning, and he says, "Dave, can you just help me? Because I'm a striker. He was a grappler. He wanted to work on getting in through strikes to get the takedown." I was like, "Yeah, no worries. Just throw some strikes at me, Dave, and we're going to work and we're going to take down." We were just messing about and wrestling, and he took me down, and when the way we landed, my collarbone fell off, so my SC joint separated. So still is to this day, but the story of that is I went to the hospital and they did scans and whatever else, and the orthopedic consultant comes in and his introductory line was, it's not good when you see me. I was like, oh great, here we go. Um, Told a story about how he'd only ever seen one SC separation worse than my one, and that was a rugby player, and they didn't do anything about that one either. I'm like, oh, fantastic. Why am I here? Um, so he sent me off, told me to come back next week. So I went back next week and I'm sitting in the waiting area and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Clock's ticking. I had a client to get to, and I just thought, you know what? Fuck this. And I got up and I left. And as I'm walking down the stairs, it was like, I guess I'm doing this myself, like I did with the back, like I did with everything else. So I'm walking down the stairs, and as I'm walking down the stairs, the shoulder pain started to ease. Got outside, unlocked my bike because cycle everywhere in Dublin is faster. You don't drive in Dublin, waste of time. So unlocked the bike, got on the bike. By the time I got back to Wild Geese to the gym, the shoulder was actually feeling quite good. All the pain had dissipated to a very, very tolerable level. I was like, right, because I decided I am in charge. I took responsibility. A lady who I worked with she had the mental health center around the corner from the gym that we sort of did a bit of work together. She was all about this phrase, personal responsibility. So I took personal responsibility. So way before that, when it was the back injury, just like way before that, when it was the ankle injuries from running the mountains, it was personal responsibility that got me back on my feet doing the thing I wanted to do. It's not really any particular method. It's not really any system. You know what I mean? It's again attitude, I suppose.
Hmm. Yeah, it really comes back to that attitude of, well, also
Mhm.
believing that you can get better and
Which is attitude.
having the discipline to
Hmm.
do what you need to do. So I guess just
Hmm.
to get really granular and practical, what was it that you needed to do that you took responsibility of? What did that look like? If I was a fly on the wall and watching you at that period in your life.
We tore at the back again
Let's talk
when
about
I
the
first.
back problem. Yeah.
Okay, so at that time I was averaging about 4 hours of training a day because I do, you know, you run across town to get to training, then you do your lifting, and then you do your martial arts, and then you have a breather, and then you do some more stuff, and you have a breather, and you do some teaching and some training with the clients, the students, and then you know, 4 hours. And the back blew up. Couldn't do that anymore. So thought I would try. I had a kettlebell at that point. So I thought at home, I will follow, I've got it somewhere. I have Pavel's books, Enter the Kettlebell. I thought, right, I'll follow what he says in that and I'll learn about this kettlebell thing. So I was doing that. So I'd wake up and I'd have some food, I'd chill out in home and I'd do some reading. And then I'd get the kettlebell out and I'd do a little workout in the home. Then I'd get myself across to the gym and I would hang from the pull-up bar. I just did pull-ups I thought, well, I can't really train the lower body because it doesn't really work. So I will train the upper body. And I got really strong on pull-ups and one-arm push-ups. I practiced various martial arts movements at the pace I could. There's a form called San Chin, which is a high tension form. You're squeezing all the muscles and you're breathing out really hard. Um, I thought, well, that squeezes everything. Isometric type strength. Thought maybe that'll be helpful. So I did that. Couldn't squat. I could barely put my shoes on. So I really wanted to be able to squat again. So I just got on a step and I just started doing single leg squats at the range of motion I could manage, which wasn't very much at the time. And I built that up and I built that up and I built that up until eventually I was doing pistol squats. Um, and that took a long time. Every night, in order to be able to lie flat, I was a single man at the time, so it was kind of easy. But every night I got into a pigeon type stretch, pigeon pose type stretch, and I read a book in a pigeon stretch. Did about 20 minutes of that, just simply to be able to lie flat and go to sleep. And then the mornings were fun because you'd wake up, and when it was bad, when it was fresh, I'd grab my towel and I'd actually hook my foot and I'd pull my foot up with the towel, which would take a few minutes, and so I could get the socks and shoes on so I could leave the house. Um, but it all added up, and it was the combination of stuff with the not giving up and the taking responsibility that actually got me back training.
Mm.
Um, and then from that, the training revolved around pull-ups, push-ups, and single leg squats while learning kettlebell swings and that. And yeah, I realized that the body liked this this way of training,
Mm.
and the back got stronger. I actually just tweaked the back again the other day, which is the first time in years I had a flare up. But what was I saying? So yeah, it was the attitude that got me through of just not giving up and being open to experimenting.
Mm.
Um, Same or similar with the shoulder injury when the SC joint separated. I was like, right, what do I need to do? Well, I can't lift my arm up. I kind of want to be able to lift my arm up. So let's do things that gradually lifts the arm up. And at that point, I was knew a hell of a lot more about movement and rehab and recovery and strength training and all that. So the shoulder was actually quite a simple journey. Got it back quite quickly. Um, with the back injury, not so much. But it was just a case of what do I want to do? What am I putting in the destination on your sat nav? Right? Here's my location. What's my destination? And then we just plan the journey from one to the other with many detours and distractions, but always aiming for that destination.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you for elaborating on that. It's, again, uncanny how similar our story is there. In that when I was having my back problems, I also had a hamstring strain I was trying to heal. And I turned to strength training and I couldn't train my lower body. So I ended up doing a lot of upper body training and then learning how to train unilaterally, one leg at a time. And eventually, all these things, I was able to manage my pain quite well. When I learned more about anatomy in motion and following Gary Ward's philosophy, understanding how to explore the full movement spectrum that each joint possesses in 3 dimensions, that gave me an extra level of clarity on what exactly my body can't do that it should be able to do for me to have more access to it. That took me to
Mhm.
another level with understanding why I had back pain in the first place and what to do more specifically about it biomechanically. Do you have anything that you learned? Because I know that you went through the anatomy in motion course, and I think it's a large part of your practice this
Yeah.
to this day. And was there anything that you learned from that that changed how you work with yourself and with other bodies as well?
Yeah. So, um, one client at the time trained with me and he went away for a few years and he came back. So he knew me before and after the anatomy motion training. And he did comment that the way I coached had changed a huge amount since doing the anatomy motion, which I was in found interesting. Still don't know exactly what he meant, but he said it had changed a huge amount. But um, so it was 2009, 10-ish, I think, when I did the courses. Um, and I was put on them. Okay. Um, I was recommended to them by a friend who was a physio. I was referring clients to him, but I asked him, how can I help my clients better so I don't need to refer to you? And he just laughed. He says, right, Gary Ward's coming over, anatomy of motion, you should check it out. A friend of his had done it and spoke very highly of it, Dave McGettigan. So went and did the level one course as it was. And it just made sense to me. It was just, yeah, it's right. It felt so much in line with a lot of the martial arts training, especially actually the internal, the Chinese style internal martial arts training, the Qigong stuff. I was like, that makes absolute sense. Then get into the joint mechanics of the anatomy. I was like, right, okay, I'm a little behind the curve on some of that. I was in a room full of, one dude at his own osteopath clinic for 10 years and, this caliber of people. And then there's me, the shaved monkey in the corner. But I knew movement. I knew how the body should be able to move. And it just made sense. I don't think there was anything about the anatomy motion that ever put me off. It was like, and to be fair, Gary and Chris at the time, they have a way of teaching which I really enjoyed in that they don't ram information down your throat. They present you an idea and then have you go off and explore it. Now, I know that changed a little bit when they changed the format of the courses. Um, anytime they came to Dublin, we used to drop in and just visit them. So you saw them teaching evolution. So the courses changed. A 6-day course, very different experience to what I did, which was level 1, 2, 3. They'd actually amalgamated 3 and 4 into one course by the time I got to, but 3 days on level 1 doing suspension and propulsion, 3 days on level 2 doing shift and strike, and then level 3 was 4 days of doing a whole lot of stuff. So that was 9 days, as opposed to the 6-day immersion course. So technically we had more time, but it was spread out over a longer time period. So I don't know whether we got taught better. I don't know. Maybe we did as originals. But it just made sense. And one day I was sat at home. I just got home from coaching and sitting in the chair, been messing with the kids. They were young at the time and the dog and all that, and they'd all run off. I'm just sitting there myself, and I thought, hang on, sit here. Something's off. What's different? Something's weird. And I realized I was comfortable.
Hmm.
There was no niggle. There was nothing bothering me. I'm like, that's weird. And I was like, the first time in years I've been genuinely comfortable just sitting down since that big back injury. I was like, right, definitely something in this. You
Mm.
know, bear in mind we've just done 3 days of anatomy motion practice, but well, there's definitely something in this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar experience in that regard. And yeah, I wonder what it would have been like to do the course broken up into that sort of structure versus 6 days straight. I suppose a lot has to do with learning style as well. And some people really struggle to handle 6 days nonstop.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
I can imagine.
yeah. Um, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about language.
Hmm.
Something that for me in the anatomy and motion course was my first exposure to people who talked about the body very differently. Like you said, their style of presentation was very different. And I think a lot of it was the focus on using words with more awareness of their
Hmm.
power. And I think in your work, that's something that I see you pay a lot of attention to is how you use your words, knowing
Right.
what they can convey to the people that we're working with. And so I was just wondering if you could tell me a bit about this idea of shifting from fixing brokenness to unlocking potential. That's something I've seen you write about, and it's a yeah, can you tell me a bit about that shift and just focusing on different words in our process from fixing brokenness versus unlocking potential in the body? And I think a lot
Okay.
of people come to see us when they're hurt with this idea that they are broken and going back to the idea of identifying with a diagnosis, they're a little bit attached to that. And
Hmm.
sometimes just switching our vocabulary around it has such an impact. Do you have anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, words are powerful. Words do carry weight. And if you're in a vulnerable mindset, which if you've injured, you're going to be, you go to an expert who is there to fix you, like that, like the orthopedic surgeon coming in. You know it's not good when you see me. Talk about a nocebic sentence. Absolute garbage. And I sat there thinking, you know what, if you were talking to somebody who wasn't me, how would that affect them?
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? To me, that's a challenge.
mm,
Do you know what I mean? Say, yeah, really? I'll prove you wrong, son. Do you know what I mean? But to somebody else, that's them just being told, we can't fix you, you're fucked.
mm,
And that just doesn't sit right with me. It, like, yes, you could be broken. I think I put something up the other day about brokenness. I know it was a conversation I was having with one of my lads. Like you're not broken. Yeah, you're injured, but you're not broken. There's still something you can do. If you're breathing, you're still in the fight. So let's fight. So we'll just keep taking that next step and that next step. We just have to figure out what the next step's going to be. What can you do? So if we can then, this is the way I like to work with people. We blend training and rehab together because rehab is boring. It's not fun. It's not exciting. So you blend it in with training. So you've got a lower body injury. Great. We'll train the shit out of your upper body while we rehab the lower body. And that's just an example, but it's there's something you can do. So let's figure it out. And we will move you along that journey. We, like you said, unlock a potential. The potential's there. We don't know how much of that potential we can realize, but let's realize as much as possible of that potential. You're still breathing, so we can do something. Doing, you're not dead yet. Plenty of time to be dead, but let's for now keep moving forward. And yeah, it can be frustrating because you want to move forward faster than you can, and you want to be able to do the things you used to be able to do. But if we keep it, um, you know, it's the language has to be somewhat positive. The message has to be positive. I get told I'm blunt and acerbic and all this kind of stuff because call a spade a spade. Like, yeah, your knee's fucked. Great, we can't use that, but we can use the other knee, can't we? We just keep working. We make light of situations. If you spend time around people who do dangerous things, you'll notice they make light of dangerous scenarios and injuries and all that, minimizing. the size of it in their head. And that I bring that to the rehab as well. It's like, yeah, okay. So you're on crutches. So what? Do you know what I mean? Somebody comes in. I had a lad in the other day talking about some injury he had. I was like, he got injured playing a match, and he said, I probably shouldn't have, but I played on and we finished the match. I'm like, well, did you win? Yeah. Well, then you did the right thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's, you just come bring it that back to attitude. You want to create in somebody this attitude. You want to this attitude of I will not stop, I will not quit. I just need to find out what I can do. We get them going along that journey, then that's where magic happens. It's like, right, you're not going to stop. You're going to take responsibility for yourself, and we're going to have a laugh doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's going to hurt. It's going to suck, but we'll have a laugh doing it. And that's when we see when somebody really attaches themselves to that. That's when magic happens. That's when progress really happens. I think we can be a bit too serious and po-faced sometimes, but it does it. Language, it does start with language. You never tell somebody you can't.
Mm.
It's you can't yet.
Mm.
We never tell somebody they absolutely can because they might not be able to, but it's a case of we'll work towards it. Let's see if we can. What if? It's all open-ended. It's all question. We don't know what you're capable of yet, but we're going to find out.
Hmm. The word yet, I love that. Just adding that changes things completely, completely transforms the energy around what you're communicating to them. You say the word self-responsibility quite a bit. That's been obviously a large part of your journey and
Mhm.
your underlying philosophy, and me too. For me, being independent, uh, it's almost a pathological trait that I have. And I think that just help me understand this a little bit. I think there's a line between self-responsibility, taking ownership for ourselves, which are obviously good things, but then also needing to ask for help when it's necessary. Where do you see those two things converging? Because I can understand if there's someone who's listening to this who feels a little like they don't know how to take self-responsibility, or they don't have that discipline, or they don't know what to do, or they're feeling really stuck. And then there's Dave saying, "Well, you just got to take responsibility." Like, so what advice do you have for that person?
Well, part of that responsibility is finding an expert to help you.
Mm.
Um, you know, if your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic, an expert. You know, you're not necessarily going to try and do it yourself because that's not your thing. That's not my thing anyway. Um, you might be a mechanic, I don't know. Um, but it's know your skill set. It's like you asked at the start, title. What do I call myself? I really don't like titles. And again, it's a martial arts thing. My instructor never used the title sensei, although he could have done. But I've been in other places where the instructor insists on being called sensei or sifu or whatever else. And I'm like, really, dude? Really? Why? And it's, on the training floor in Wild Geese at any one time, I would have a solicitor, an accountant, a painter and decorator, a brickie. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, in your world, I'm the numpty. You're the expert. In my world, in here, I'm the expert and you're the numpty. So it's just context. So titles I don't like. And knowing that in this world, I am the expert. Nobody knows me better than me. Nobody knows you better than you. You're the expert on you. But when something goes wrong in you, you're going to need a bit of help, probably. That's why we have dentists and we have surgeons with specialties. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mentioned the dude earlier on that helped with the rehab from his heart surgery. He had a heart valve replacement. Can't do that with movement. Can't do that in the gym. Do you know what I mean? You need somebody who has a specialty. I can't do that. I'm not going to get my Leatherman out and cut your chest open for you. That's not going to work. So you need to find people. I mean, part of this idea of responsibility is being responsible enough to know that I need to come to see you because you know the stuff that I don't. Just like, there's books behind me, there's books over there. You buy a book so you can expand your knowledge. Or I can go and see somebody who already has that knowledge.
Hmm. So not the responsibility to have to or to be able to immediately cure and heal yourself, but the responsibility to know what's the next step, what do I need to learn, who do I need to ask? Yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense.
Expertise is an interesting subject. So there's a lovely definition on the expert, and it's somebody who can apply their knowledge in unfamiliar circumstances. And I like that.
Mm.
But it's also, as job, a client of mine, he came back, he'd been missing for years. He'd been off studying like a lunatic. He came back as a PhD. So Dr. Kai, PhD. I was like, right, Kai, here's what we're going to do. And he did this movement and that, da, 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 da. And he just fucked it up right royally. I'm like, dude, you got a PhD. You're meant to be smart. What are you doing? And he looked at me and just grinned. He says, Dave, a PhD is like a laser beam. You're really smart in this small dot, and then everything else is pitch black. It was like, fair enough. Drawing at it. In his laser beam, he knows everything there is to know. Outside of that, he knows nothing, in his words. Right? And this we all have our specialties.
Mm.
I know nothing about accounting, but I know a guy who knows an absolute ton about it. So if I have a question on that, I go and see him. I don't need to sit and Google and learn it myself because I have no interest. So, yeah, being responsible, taking that self responsibility, knows who to call on, knows you can't do everything yourself.
Mm. Yeah. And I suppose also know how much you are the kind of person who can do things on your own and how much support you need. I think you and I
Mhm.
are similar in that we are very, very oriented towards wanting to do things ourselves and be self-sufficient. And some people, maybe in other areas of life, they are, but when it comes to caring for their bodies, maybe they need just to know about themselves that they need a degree of support. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's how you're wired. And actually, another definition of expert that I've heard that I like a lot, it reminded me of, is someone who has made every possible mistake in their field,
Mhm.
but also who knows what to do from those mistakes. Um, One last thing I would like to ask you about. This is something you mentioned just a moment ago that you currently have a little tweak with your back. And it made
Mhm.
me think of something really important, which is this whole concept of injury prevention and being pain free. And I know I've read something that you wrote about this, and I quote Dave Hedges. I used to think that injury prevention was a thing, but as the years went on, I came to realize it is a dream. It's a lofty goal, but ultimately unachievable. And
Mhm.
to me, this sounds true, and it also inspires me with optimism. For some people, that might sound like a very negative thing, but for me, it brings me hope. Can you say a bit more about this injury prevention thing and why it's just a pipe dream to be pain-free forever?
Yeah. So being younger and a bit more naive, when you're in your 20s and you're made of rubber, it's easy to think you can prevent all injuries. Um, you get a few more miles on the clock and you get downgraded from bulletproof to bullet resistant. You realize that no, things are going to break, things are going to get damaged. And as an old mate used to say, if you're not breaking your toys, you're not playing hard enough. So injuries are just going to happen. A real sort of stop and think moment for me was when I was still fairly new in anatomy motion, and a lady had come in to me for help with pain and all that. And we're sitting and we're going through history. Okay, so what do you do? Didn't play any sports, didn't really do much activity, had no significant injuries. I'm like, I'd never met a person like this before. Everybody I knew was a lunatic and falling off mountains or getting punched in the head for fun. Do you know what I mean? I'd never met somebody who had a blank sheet. I was like, and you're sitting here in pain. I'm like, wow, this is wow. So I helped her and off she went, quite happy. But it's like that stayed with me. I was like, right. So this person has done none of the stuff that most of the people I generally deal with has done and is still in pain. Okay, you genuinely cannot prevent pain and injury. It is coming for you. Just like you can't prevent the rain. It's going to rain. But if it rains, you put on a coat. Simple. Attitude again. Um, so yeah, knowing that it's going to happen. Expertise again, yeah. What you said about failing. An expert, Thomas Edison. I invented the light bulb. I didn't find a thousand ways. I didn't fail a thousand times. I found a thousand ways it didn't work. Something like that was Edison, wasn't it? So, just get my thoughts in order here. We know things are going to go wrong. If we live in this sort of bubble of hubris where everything's going to be right and it's going to be wonderful and we can prevent injuries and there'll be no pain and everything's going to be fantastic, when you do trip up, when something does go wrong, it's a big fall. If you know and accept that things are going to go wrong, when it does, you're sort of prepared. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So I hope I'm not going to get injured. I hope I'm not going to get hurt. But when it does happen, because it will happen, I'm prepared for it. Do you know what I mean? And bringing it back to responsibility, it's irresponsible to tell people you're going to go through life pain free. It's irresponsible to say that injuries can be prevented because you can roll your ankle on an escalator. You could be messing with your kids and trip over a chair. Do you know what I mean? Injuries are coming for you. You don't have to be on a field, taking impact. Injuries are coming for you. But you can work as best you can with a mindset of injury prevention. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So if I do these things, I will hope I don't get injured. If I have a hamstring strain, okay, I figure out why the hamstring is strained and then I work on it and I build it and I turn my hamstrings into these bungee cords, these big elastic bands, then maybe they're going to be more resilient and less likely to be strained again. That's good thinking. Doesn't mean they're not, but it's good thinking, isn't it? Um,
Mm.
so yeah, prevention, it's an altruistic goal. It's something we want, but it's not something we can genuinely do. We can't prevent things 100%
Mm.
because that lady who did have a blank sheet, she couldn't.
Mm.
Well, she was trying to, but it's like if somebody like that still ends up in pain, well, why not jump around? Oh, here's a story you'll like. Just popped in my head. There's a guy in the UK, Steve Tappin. He's a Philippine martial arts dude, ex-military, ex-police. No, not police. He was a doorman. He was a fireman. Do you know what I mean? All hard stuff. And I think his career as a fireman. He fell off a ladder, broke his back, and he was telling me this story. He was lying in pain on the sofa, and his wife at the time was just fed up with him and says, "Does it hurt lying there?" I went, "Yeah, I'm in agony." Right. Does it hurt when you're up and jumping about doing your martial arts stuff? And he went, yeah, agony. I said, well, which would you rather be in pain doing? And that's basically all he needed. He needed a telling off to get off his arse and start moving again. Um, I was, I forgot what you asked me now. But it's that idea of you just get up and go. But with it's injury prevention, isn't it? We're talking about. Yeah, you it's gonna happen. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and be like Steve. Get up and just do your thing because why not? It's better than the
Mm.
alternative.
You know what made me optimistic reading that was that it communicated to me just lower your expectations. And then something inside me was deeply settled that I didn't have to live a life where I had the expectation of being pain-free. And they say
Mhm.
that happiness is lowering your expectations, or at least having a life in which you're living in a way that your expectations aren't so high that everything disappoints you. So it was something
Okay.
very soothing in that for me, and I hope for other people it has the same effect. And
Well,
well, I have one last question for you.
far away.
And maybe you have an answer right away. Maybe you'll take a bit of time with this one. But I am very curious. If, Dave, you were to die tomorrow and
Mhm.
no one would remember your existence, like just completely wiped from history,
Mhm.
what is one thing that you would like to see different about the world as a result of you having been in it and your direct impact, but no one would remember you for it?
I would like to see. It's a big question.
I know.
So mentioned earlier on this idea of the human animal, which it's a phrase I thought I invented, but there's about a million other people invented it as well. Um, in my late teens, early 20s, I was living in the mountains in the north of England and just enjoying being out and about and moving and feeling more like an animal. What has been in more recent years ancestral and primal and all these fancy words that are being used now, but to me it was just this human animal. You can run over a mountain, you can lift a log, and you can move and stretch and be doing all these. You just feel free. A little more difficult in the city, but it's still possible in the city. And it's just a way of finding out what it is that makes you feel closer to the 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 original part of what is a Homo sapiens. You're an animal. Can we be more animalistic? And I don't mean that we're running around naked and killing things with our teeth, but it just means we're in touch with those base processes. We're moving in different ways. We are exploring our environment and interacting with our environment, and we're properly relaxing and switching off. Um, I have a young dog at the minute. She's a border collie, she's like a rubber ball full of energy and always bouncing about. And border collies are known for their endless energy. But then, when she needs to, she just curls up, goes to sleep, and then gets up, has a big stretch, and is off moving again. I'm like, that's right. That's how it should be. We can jump around and move around and be awesome. But then when we're done, we should relax and take a nap and have a bit of a stretch and get up and then just carry on. So that's the idea I would like to leave behind me. That this is how we can do this. If you've got, I mean, your style of expression of your human animal, what you can be different. To some people it's in they can be in the garage rebuilding a classic car. That's their expression. Some people it's going to the mountains. Some people it's a martial arts club. You said you were a dancer. That might be your expression. Um, it doesn't matter what the expression is. The fact that it's yours and you do it for no other purpose than you want to do it. And I think that's what I'd like to leave behind.
Mm, yeah, everyone enjoying inhabiting their human animal in whatever unique way that takes for them. Yeah, I resonate with that a lot.
And
Yeah.
then all the human being stuff, which is your mortgages and your careers and all that, all the boring stuff, tends to get better when the human animal's satisfied.
Mm. Yeah, it's like a pyramid. You take care of the bottom, the base hierarchical need for
Yeah.
what does a body need to survive, and movement is a part of that. And also
Mhm.
authenticity, I think I'm hearing in that
Yeah.
too. Just knowing yourself enough to know what is it that I'm doing this for? What do I love? And how am I going to support my body to do that? Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. It's not
Well,
just body, mind as well.
yes, yes. Well, thank you, Dave.
No problem.
Is there, if anyone is interested in learning more about what it is you do, is there somewhere we can direct them to go?
Just put Dave Hedges into Google, and there's a few of us. There's not many Dave Hedges, but there's only one does what I do. Will pop up. So the website is davehedges.net, and the social medias are all under my name. So yeah, just stick the name into Google.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Dave, for taking the time to speak with me. I really enjoyed hearing your
How's
thoughts.
that?